Ever get that feeling that, all these amazing blockchains we have are a bit like having a bunch of fantastic apps that just can't really talk to each other?
Uh-huh.
You've got all this potential, but it's kind of locked up in these separate silos. What if there was a way to make them all work together more seamlessly?
That is exactly the challenge that our sources today are focused on. They're all about Hyperlane,
Huh?
which aims to tackle precisely that problem.
Hyperlane, okay.
Yeah, and we've got a fair bit to go through here. High-level stuff, project descriptions, but also the technical details, their tokenomics, adoption figures, even their future plans.
Right.
So the goal for this deep dive really is to cut through all that complexity and figure out what Hyperlane is actually doing and, why it might matter for someone like you listening in.
Okay, sounds good. So let's break this down then. What is Hyperlane, like in the big picture?
Well, think of Hyperlane as maybe a foundational layer. It lets different blockchains communicate, exchange messages, really, any kind of data without needing permission from, a central authority.
Okay, permissionless communication.
Exactly. Their big ambition is to provide these open source tools so developers can connect, everything, apps, assets, info across any chain, any virtual machine. It's about building a truly connected crypto space.
So basically making blockchains play nicely together. What makes Hyperlane different from, other projects trying to do this cross-chain thing?
A really key aspect is the flexibility and the control it gives developers. Instead of one rigid system, they've built it to be modular.
Modular, yeah.
Yeah, so developers can customize the security for their specific cross-chain setup. They choose what works best for them, and they can build across all sorts of different blockchain environments without getting stuck with one vendor.
That sounds like it puts a lot of power back into the builder's hands. I did notice a pretty bold statement in the docs comparing their goal to being like Visa built on blockchains. What's the idea there?
Right, that analogy really points to their long-term vision. They want to be the essential plumbing, the infrastructure for how value and information move in a multi-chain world.
Like Visas for payments now.
Pretty much, aiming for that same kind of widespread use and network effect. And to get there, they've designed their system with some really interesting pieces.
All right, let's dive into that then. How does this actually work? What are the key components making up Hyperlane?
Okay, so at its core, it's this modular design, right? A couple of key building blocks. First, you've got the messaging contracts. These are lightweight bits of code called mailbox and the interchain gas payment, or IGP, contract. They sit on each connected chain.
Mailbox and IGP, got it.
And the IGP, that handles the gas fees for cross-chain stuff. So these contracts are like the send and receive points for messages. Then you have relayers.
Relayers, okay.
These are permissionless actors. Anyone can be one, basically. They're the ones who actually pick up the messages from a mailbox on one chain and deliver them to the mailbox on another.
And they get paid for this.
They do. Actually, it's interesting. The docs mention these relayers have already earned over $7 million in fees just in the first part of 2024.
Wow, $7 million. That definitely shows there's demand for this kind of communication.
For sure. It's a strong signal. So, okay, the relayers move the messages, but how do you trust those messages when they jump between chains? That's always the tricky part, right?
Yeah, security. How's that handled?
That's where the interchain security modules, or ISMs, come in. ISMs?
ISMs.
Yeah, think of them as like different kinds of locks you can put on a door. They define how a cross-chain message gets verified.
Okay, so different security options.
Exactly. And this is where it gets really cool, I think. Developers can plug in different validation methods, like maybe you need multiple signatures, or you verify using light client data from the source chain, or you could even use zero-knowledge proofs or leverage security from staking platforms like EigenLayer.
So you can choose your security level, basically.
You got it. And the really powerful part is you can swap these ISMs out later without needing a massive overhaul or a hard fork on the chains themselves. It's like security Legos you just plug and play.
Security Legos.
Yeah.
I like that. It makes the customization aspect really clear. Okay, so with this flexible security, why is this important? Why should developers, or really anyone in crypto, care about Hyperlane? What's the big benefit?
Well, the main advantage for developers is that complete control, that sovereignty, and avoiding vendor lock-in. Unlike some other interoperability solutions that might be more centralized or just rigid, Hyperlane lets developers decide how their apps talk across chains and what security they need.
And it seems like people are noticing. The sources point to some pretty fast adoption, right?
Oh, definitely. Within just 12 months, this is as of April 2025, mind you, Hyperlane connected over 150 different blockchains.
150 in a year.
Yeah. and captured something like over 25% of the market for cross-chain message passing. That kind of growth, that quickly, it really shows there's a need for this flexible approach.
That's impressive momentum.
Yeah.
And it's not just connecting like EVM chains, is it? They work with different types.
That's right. They support more than 5 different virtual machine environments. So yeah, EVM, but also Cosmos, SVM, Fuel, Move. They're actually noted as being kind of ahead of the curve in supporting the SVM ecosystem, especially with integrations like Eclipse, Sonic SVM, and soon.
So broad coverage.
Crucial in today's multi-chain world, with all these different technologies popping up.
And it looks like some pretty big names in crypto are already using Hyperlane. I saw mentions of Aave, Celestia, Eigenlayer. That's quite a roster.
Absolutely. Those strategic integrations really highlight the real-world use and, frankly, the trust that established projects are placing in Hyperlane.
Can you give an example? Like the Avoiv one.
Sure. So with Avoy, Hyperlane enables their cross-chain governance. It means Avi token holders on, say, Polygon could vote on a proposal that's executed on Ethereum mainnet. Before solutions like this, that was way more complicated, maybe even impossible for the average user.
Ah, okay. That makes sense.
Yeah, and you see other things too, like their work with Celestia for data availability, integrations with Caldera and Gelato for rollups, Velodrome for cross-chain swaps, they call them super swaps. Renzo uses them for their restaking bridge. And the Eigenlayer integration is significant. They're apparently the largest AVS by operator count, securing billions in ETH.
Oh.
Plus, they're involved with the Ethereum Foundation's Open Intent framework and even launched OpenUSDT, a stablecoin, on the Optimism superchain. So yeah, lots of different applications.
Okay, so we get the what, the how, and the why it's catching on. Let's switch gears a bit and talk about the token, the HYPR token. What's its role in all this?
Right, HYPR. It's the native token, ERC20 standard, and it does a few key things in the ecosystem. First off, it's used for incentives.
Incentives for who?
For both builders and users. It rewards activity on Hyperlane. There are these things called expansion rewards and also a system they call hyperstreaks, where staking HYPR can, multiply the rewards you get.
Okay, so rewarding usage, encouraging people to build and use the network. Makes sense. What else does HYPR do?
Second big role is security. Validators, the ones who might eventually help secure messages via certain ISMs, will need to stake HYPR. It's like collateral.
So if they mess up, they lose their stake.
Exactly. Their staked HYPR could be slashed if they act maliciously, but if they do their job right, they can earn fees for providing that security. And third, there's a value accrual aspect. The idea is that protocol fees generated could potentially be used to buy back HYPR, maybe remove it from circulation or redistribute it.
Interesting. So incentives, security, and potential value capture. Okay, let's get into the token specifics then. The tokenomics. What do the sources say about distribution and supply?
All right, so the token is HYPER, ERC20. When it listed on Binance, the initial circulating supply was around 175.2 million.
Okay.
And the total maximum supply is set at 1 billion HYPER. So that initial circulating amount was about 17.52% of the total.
And wasn't there some funding before the public listing? Through token warrants?
Yes, that's right. They raised $23 million that way back in 2022 and 2024. Some big names involved too, like Variant, CoinFund, HackVC, Galaxy.
And those tokens, are they locked up?
They are. There's a 3-year schedule, a 12-month QIF, meaning none are released for the first year, and then they unlock gradually, linearly over the next 24 months.
Okay. And what about getting the token out to the wider community? I think I saw something about a Binance HO dealer airdrop.
Yeah, absolutely. 20 million HYPR, which is 4% of the total supply, or about 12.26% of the overall airdrop pool, was set aside for Binance users holding BNB. That started back on April 22nd, 2025, a way to get broader distribution from the get-go.
Makes sense. And beyond that specific Binance airdrop, how does the rest of the initial distribution look?
Looking at the bigger picture from the sources, there are allocations like the expansion drop, which was 6.73%, marketing campaigns got 1.53%, market makers and liquidity provision got 4.5%, and then there was a main user and partner airdrop, which accounted for 7.5% of the total supply.
And how did that main airdrop go? Did people claim it?
Seems like it went pretty well. The numbers showed around 341,000 addresses were eligible. Over 291,000 of those registered. That's about 85%. And of the tokens allocated for that airdrop, around 88.4% were actually claimed. So pretty high engagement.
That's quite detailed.
Yeah, they even provided like some of the initial on-chain wallet addresses for the to pay airdrop on different chains: Ethereum, Arbitrum Base, BSC, Optimism, and also for CChape or the stake version on ETH and BSC, plus addresses for some market makers and the Foundation Treasury. They did add a little note saying funds might move around for liquidity pools before spot trading opened, which is standard stuff. But yeah, quite transparent.
Good to see that level of detail.
Yes.
Okay, so looking forward then, what's next for Hyperlane? What's on their roadmap?
Well, they've already hit some milestones mentioned in the docs. Like late 2024, they launched their Deploy SDK, which makes deploying Hyperlane permissionless.
Okay.
Done. Q1 2025, Superlane went live on the OP Superchain. Also, that OUSDT stablecoin on OP Superchain is listed as in production, so likely very close or just launched.
Right.
For Q2 2025, their Cosmos SDK module is also marked in production. Then, looking a bit further out, Q2 or Q3 this year, they expect ISMs for Starknet and TON to be in testing. And for the second half of 2025, the plan includes a ZK-proof-based ISM and version 2 of their warp roots.
So continuous building, adding more chains, more features like ZK proofs. Seems like they're keeping busy.
Definitely looks that way, constantly expanding their reach and capabilities.
All right. So for anyone listening who's intrigued and wants to, learn more or maybe even get involved with the community, where should they go?
The sources give a few good starting points. On Twitter X, they have their main account at Hyperlane and a separate foundation account at Hyperlane FDN.
Okay.
They also have a Discord server, which is usually where the community discussion happens, GitHub for the code, of course, and a Medium blog for articles and updates.
And for deep technical details.
Their official documentation is the place to go.
Yeah.
And there's also a Dune dashboard mentioned where you can actually see and analyze the on-chain activity related to Hyperlane.
Fantastic resources. Okay, so to kind of wrap this all up, what are the main takeaways from this deep dive into Hyperlane?
I think the key things are Hyperlane is pushing for this permissionless, really adaptable, modular way to connect blockchains. It seems to be gaining traction pretty fast. And it has this native token, HYPUR, which is built to drive usage through incentive, help secure the network, and maybe capture some value as the whole thing grows.
It definitely feels like it could be a really important piece of the puzzle, for building that more connected, more efficient, multi-chain future everyone talks about.
It really could be. And, it makes you think, if you can truly move value and information seamlessly across any blockchain, what kinds of new decentralized apps does that unlock? What user experiences become possible that just aren't feasible today because everything's so fragmented? It really opens up a lot of possibilities for you to consider.